Senator Shaheen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to each of our witnesses for being here today. I think most of us would agree that the federal wage system is broken. It gets hung up on political ideology differences in trying to fix it, and that's the problem. But I don't know, I think maybe it was you, Mr. Taylor, who said that we have, my recollection was 9 million job openings, but only 6.5 million workers. Isn't one of the challenges that we're facing the demographics of this country, that we are not producing because of our birth rate? We don't have the number of people that we need to fill the jobs that are being created.
And undoubtedly, and I mentioned that we have a birth rate problem and have had so for the last 2 decades. What come as a surprise to people is you're talking about a post-COVID impact. During 2020 and 2021, the birth rate dropped 4%. We saw a significant, so it was already on its way down, and then it dropped, and for good reason. No one wanted to go to a hospital during that period of time.
And on top of that, we've had the most restrictive immigration, legal immigration rates in my lifetime in the last 6 years or so. Yes. So that also exacerbates the problem. If we could fix our broken immigration system, we would do much better in terms of having the workforce that we need. But can you, one of the things I understand Senator Warren talked about, how we were able to outproduce our adversaries during World War II, and one of the ways was by getting women into the workforce. How can the defense industrial base better leverage women's participation? I don't know who might like to answer that.
Well, the discussion with Senator Warren, which I think is exactly on this target, Senator Shaheen, was about childcare and women not being able to participate in the workforce, both keeping the numbers down, but also meaning that at a important developmental part of their career, they're not in the workforce, they're not acquiring the skills, and therefore they can't move up later, including to supervisory positions. So you're missing people in a static sense, but also in a dynamic sense.
Childcare is clearly an issue. It's something that I appreciate, having had 3 children and having a challenge with childcare for the 30 years that they were at home. But I think we've got a bigger problem in that, as I've visited schools, that young girls are not as engaged in the STEM subjects as young boys are. And so for robotics competitions, for example, girls are much less likely to participate than young boys. Are there ways that we can encourage girls to think about those subjects that we're not already doing? Lockwood.
Thank you for the question. I have a young daughter at home, and she told me when she was 3 that when she wanted to grow up, when she grows up, she wants to be a doctor and a mommy and a scientist, and I want that to be possible for her, so I determined I certainly was not going to quit. To double down on the child care issue, I do believe this is a critical thing, but to your point, it's really important that the child can envision herself doing the job. Children are not going to study, they're not going to invest in things that they think are for other people. And so the broader we can make opportunities to engage in after-school activities, to put the drone remote in the hands of all the children is a good thing. I'll also note that among the developed economies, the United States has among the shortest school day. This creates an incredible burden for all working families. There are, in many areas, good before and after care programs.
You don't have to explain that to me.
Okay.
I understand that problem. To follow on Senator Rono's question about the submarine industrial base, excuse me, over the next 10 years, the submarine industrial base is going to need to hire nearly 100,000 trained workers at both primary construction yards and 17,000 people at vendors to support the supply chain. You talked a little bit about ways that we could encourage apprenticeships and other ways we could encourage workers to join in the submarine industry. Are there ways that suppliers can also improve the labor environment for skilled workers?
Well, I think it's going to take all of them. That's really interesting. This is about a human capital strategy. We can decide that we're going to open a number of shipyards or whatever we do, but ultimately, your point, well-crafted HR strategy where you say we need 100,000 people at this period of time means we will get some percentage of people from this sector, the supplier community, the government, et cetera. This requires a comprehensive strategic overview and plan. And what we've seen is there's no shortage of programs within the federal government, but they're not orchestrated and they're not specifically identified, time limited, budget limited, et cetera, to get the results. In private sector, if I said I was going to need 100,000 employees, as has often been in the companies where I've been a Fortune 500 company, CHRO, you are told 5 years from now, we're going to need this many of these types of employees in these geographic locales. And we build a strategy around it. That is HR at its best. And it can be done, but very intentionally.
The Portsmouth Naval Shipyard, which is one of those 4 public shipyards which shares the border between New Hampshire and Maine, has taken an approach that integrates its workforce into decision-making, and that has really kept the workers there. It's really focused on working with management on good labor practices. So I would agree that's a great way to better keep people in the workforce. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Shaheen. Senator Budd, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank the witnesses for being here today. As Senator Kane mentioned